Yes.
I've done an entire webinar without hitting the record button. So I hope you
Oh
feel
my God.
better.
Well, I did a live to Facebook yesterday. It went to all my friends and it didn't go to, and so I had buddies of mine from high school saying, "Oh man, I'm so happy you guys are doing good." So, one of those deals, but I'm kind of a rookie on all this stuff, but I have been able to get through these webinars. So, you know, we've never seen anything like this, this pandemic. And I'm so glad, your grandbaby was able to get out of the hospital
Yes.
in mid-February, because, have you ever thought that something like this, had you ever kind of envisioned what you would do if something like that ever happened?
Bruce, you're a silver hair and I'm a no hair. So we've earned our stripes. We've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I started in this amazing profession in 1980.
Me too.
And so this is my 40th year. Were you 1980 as well?
1980, 40th
Well,
year.
then I've always known we were the same vintage.
Yes.
But we've been through a lot. If you think about our 40-year experience, there were three mini recessions in the 1980s. 1991 was a big one. And then, of course, in 07 and 08 it's called the Great Recession.
Right.
The economists have labeled the economic crisis of 07 and 08 as the Great Recession. And yet none of that has compared to this.
No.
And, this has been something that truly caught everyone out. Is that fair to say?
Oh, I agree. I mean, it caught us. We were out to lunch for sure.
Yeah, caught everyone out. And of course, many of your viewers will know that although I'm not a dentist, I do own a practice. And my Life Smiles Dental Care practice has been affected. Every practice has been affected. We were shut down like everyone else. Now, here's the good news. We were able to reopen, although technically we never closed, Bruce. We stayed open for emergency care under the CDC guidelines. We have a 2-doctor practice. And so what we did was we divided up, Paul and Tim divided up the days, and there was one doc every day. And we saw emergencies every day. We saw as few as 3 or 4 and as many as 8 or 9 emergencies a day. And we did that, Bruce, for a number of reasons. One of the reasons was that we have a big practice, and if our patients couldn't come to us for emergency, the only other place for them to go was the hospital. And as well as I do, there's not a hospital in the United States that's equipped to handle dental care. The best they could do is get a prescription. And then, our real worries at that point was they would be exposed. The threat, according to the experts, were that the hospital ERs were going to be overrun with COVID-19 patients. Right. And so we didn't want our patients exposed to that risk. And so we said, well, we're going to be open and we'll take care of people under the CDC guidelines. We screened them, of course. But then we were able to reopen in a more normal sense on Monday, May 4th, about 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we were on the earlier, in terms of states, we were on the earlier stage of reopening.
Yeah, we started back May 1st. So
so you were ahead of us.
Yeah, the Friday before we saw.
The Friday before. Technically, we were able to reopen on May 1st, and we made a decision that we would use that time to prep and really get ready, and then we opened on Monday. We chose to be open about 2/3 strength the first week by choice. Some of it was practical. We had a couple team members that were scrambling to arrange for daycare with respect to schools being out.
Sure.
But we also wanted to get our arms around, the protocols and like how long things were going to take. And here we are 2 weeks into it, and we're back to full strength. And, one thing we've experienced, Bruce, and I'm sure you have too, and it makes sense. So for those viewers that are not yet open, maybe this is some insight that'll help. Boy, the patients in the first 2.5 weeks have been our fanboy and our fangirl patients, right? And that makes perfect sense because they trust you. Anyone that's going to be seeing you, after all the media onslaught of this, they trust you. And they have been so much gratitude, so much thankfulness, so much graciousness. And what I've been telling our clients, Bruce, is in these first couple weeks, focus more on relationship and connection as opposed to production and efficiency.
Right.
The production efficiency is going to come.
You
And
bet.
you are the master of production. The work that you do with your Productive Dentist Academy, and every dentist on the planet needs to come through PDA.
Well, I appreciate that.
And
You know,
yeah, it's amazing how you can adapt that program to wherever any dentist is in their career, whether they're early in their career, mid-career, late career. You can teach them how to be significantly more productive.
you bet.
And you know, so many cool techniques for that. But we're focused on these first couple weeks of relationship connection. The productivity and efficiency will come.
You bet. You bet. Yeah, we actually are at 90% of our or as Howard said, Howard Fran was on last week and he said BC, before COVID, you know, and it was, so we're at 90%. So I was so amazed. I went in and worked Monday and, you know, I'm retired, but I still go to the office and have fun. And I got the gear on and you know, everything, you know, I felt good. I felt the patients were thankful. They were appreciative. They just couldn't stop saying great things.
Yeah.
And we had been seeing emergencies also.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I got to know your practice in Arizona because number 7 came off when I was speaking at a meeting out in Scottsdale, and you guys were so nice. I said, Gary, he says, go on in, they'll take care of you. And so you guys put a veneer on for me and it was awesome. And the people, your team and everybody was great. But the same thing happened. I lost a lower. And so I went in Monday. So I was a patient and a provider. And it was crazy. I mean, I felt comfortable. Yeah, putting on the gear was a little bit of a pain, but you know what? It's not that bad.
You adapted. I bet you adapted pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that I was going to ask you, I mean, do you see what I've been telling our docs is, you know, you're going to have to start doing longer procedures and less, you know, so you can still do the same productivity, but you're really going to have to be focused on, you know, doing longer procedures. And my worry is this PPO environment that we're in, which our docs, we've been doing surveys, about 75% of the docs, and we've had anywhere from 200 to 500 on these webinars, and about 75% are a mix of PPO and fee for service. Yeah. Do you see that's going to be a big issue, or what are your thoughts? What have you been talking to your docs about?
Yeah, you know, Bruce, it's such a timely conversation. And I've had an interesting seat at the table as a coach through the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, we have clients all over the country as you do. And I'm going to share, it's kind of a tale of two dentists in the COVID-19. On one hand, over here, you've got dentists, and let me preface all this by saying that none of these shutdowns have been good for anyone.
No.
I mean, at all. I mean, I get it. I get why initially it made some sense in regards to trying to flatten the curve and avoid the onslaught of the hospitals, but none of the shutdowns has been good for anyone. But on one hand, we've got dentists that really haven't been affected adversely by this financially. You know, they have profitable practices. And as a result of having profitable practices, they have put together personal emergency funds, personal reserves, you know, kind of following the Dave Ramsey model. You don't have personal reserves.
You bet.
They have practice reserves. So they have practice savings.
Yeah.
They have relatively low debt because they have higher profitability. They've been able to accelerate their debt, and they have either no debt or relatively low debt.
Right.
And while this hasn't been good, it hasn't been a crisis for them financially. And then on the other hand, you've got dentists where it's been just an outright crisis. Their practices are not very profitable. And as a result of not being very profitable, they don't have personal savings accounts. They haven't been able to put it together. They don't have a practice emergency fund, and they have high debt because of their concurrent high overhead. And the difference between the two is profitability. And the number one guide, I mean, certainly productivity can increase your profitability.
Sure.
There's no doubt. And you're a master at that. But when you're still giving away 38%, 40%, 42%, no amount of productivity can outrun that. And, you know, I'll share with you a perspective that I have, and it may sound a little contrarian, but despite COVID-19 and despite the impact on all of it, I'm not sure there's ever been a better time to successfully go out of network than right now. And if can I back that up?
You bet.
Try to.
I want to hear it.
Yeah. So, and when I say right now, I don't mean May 21st.
Right.
Okay. You know, I think initially when you come back, every dentist ought to be getting back up to speed, getting their arms around, you know, all this stuff and getting your productivity up. Right. You know, get it up. Initially, you know, once you've settled in, you know, get that up. Yeah. But depending on how the strength of the economic recovery is, Bruce, if we draw a line in the horizon in front of us, and on the right-hand side of the line, the economic recovery is weak and slow, and on the left-hand side, it's strong and fast.
Yep.
You know, economic recovery. The truth is, I don't think it's going to be either extreme. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, and hopefully it's more towards the stronger and faster.
Right.
And also, I think we have to absolutely talk regionally and even locally within this. I mean, certain areas have been way more affected than others. And you know, you're in Texas. You know, you've certainly been affected, but you've not had the effect that the Northeast has had, that's New York's had. We've not had that effect. So, and as a result of that, we were able to open up sooner, you know, and so on. But if the recovery is towards the stronger and faster, I believe that if doctors would do everything they can to prepare to successfully go out of network in the next few months. So in June, July, August, I think by the time we get to September and October, we can be sending our resignation letters successfully to the PPO plans. And let me tell you what I mean by successful. When we went out of network in my practice, you remember when I bought my practice,
I do.
Unbeknownst to us, it was infected with PPO plans.
Infected.
Bruce, you know, after a couple of weeks of getting settled in, trying to figure out where everything was, you know, it was a turnkey transition. The previous doctor walked out on a Friday and Paul and I walked in on a Monday. And we had to figure out where everything was. And after a couple of weeks, I turned to the office manager. I said, how many plans are we in? And she said, I'm not sure, Gary, but I think there's maybe 12. I said, okay. And then I dug into it and actually discovered it was 34.
Oh, really?
Now, Rhonda wasn't ignorant. It was a matter of, you know, you sign up for Aetna and it ropes you in for 6 others, right? So the actual number was 34. And we went out of network successfully with all 34 over a 2-year period in 07 and 08. Now, you might remember that a little bit. It was 7 and 08. Okay, what was going on? And how I say successfully, Bruce, is we retained 84% of our in-network patients when we went out of network. We kept 84% of them.
Wow.
So, and I tell our clients now that I want you to do better than us, because when we were doing it, then it was uncharted territory. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were winging it. We had some thoughts and had some strategies, but we were winging it. We knew we'd lose patients, but we didn't know how many. And frankly, I was thrilled that we only lost 16% of them. We kept 84%. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I tell our clients now they need to do better than us. They need to do better than 84.
Was your thoughts all about relationships and that type of thing? Or was there one thing you did that really helped besides?
Yeah, can I walk through some of the techniques?
I would love it. And also we'll put all your contact info and everything else on this, because it's recorded and it goes out to everybody. So I definitely know more.
Well, here's some of the things we did. We absolutely worked on the relationship side of our practice, you know, connecting with our patients. And, you know, Linda Miles has taught this for years and no one does it. But back in 07, Paul, we were a solo doctor practice at the time. Paul made We Care calls in the evening, 7 o'clock, to any patient that got an injection. And the reason why we defined it that way, Bruce, is because now it's a system. If it's up to Paul to decide who to call or up to Bruce to decide who to call, that's not a system, that's random. But if we say, Bruce, anybody that gets an injection gets a call. And Paul would make that call at 7 o'clock. And the call was just, and here's the cool part, 90% of them went to voicemail. Frankly, we wish 100% of them did, but, 90% went to voicemail. And we'd leave a message and Paul would say, hey, Bruce, it's Dr. Paul, your dentist. I like to call my patients on the evening of treatment just to see how well you're doing. No need to return my call. Listen, I just want to let you know I was thinking about you. Hey, by the way, I hope you broke 80 today on the golf course. So maybe you said that day you were going to play golf in the afternoon. So Paul was going to he made notes on the schedule, or he might say, hey, Bruce, you shared with me your grandson has first baseball game today. Man, hope that Little League game went well. Old school, Linda had taught that for years. And nobody does it.
That's
so
true.
one was relationship driven. Secondly was we ramped our marketing up because we knew we wanted to replace any patients we might lose. So we ramped our digital marketing up so that we had some new patient flow to offset any of those we might lose. Third, we created an in-office membership plan. We were one of the first offices in the country in 2007 to create an in-office membership plan. And if I can share how we did ours, it's an annual fee. We chose to charge $297 for first person in the family. That covers 2 hygiene appointments, exams, and x-rays. And then we charge $247 each additional family member. And we're liberal about who counts as a family member. We had a patient call early on and she said, hey, my mother doesn't live with me. She's still independent. But can she count as our family member? And we said, yes, your mother can count. If you have aunts and uncles, cousins, they can all count.
Absolutely.
And then we researched. So then we chose to offer our membership plan patients a discount on any service in our practice. And kind of like your own private Costco membership card or your own Amazon Prime card. Okay.
Absolutely.
And we researched what to charge what the discount should be, because we wanted the discount to be favorable enough for people to sign up, but minimally impacted on the practice. Our average discount in those 34 plans was 38%. 38%. So technically anything under 38% would have been a win for us. Well, we discovered in our research, we tested 20%, 18%, 15%, 12%, 10%, and 8%. And what we discovered through data was that 10% was the sweet spot.
Wow.
So our membership plan is a 10% discount on any service in our practice. If we do it, it's covered. And true confession, true transparent. I don't like the 10% discount, Bruce.
I understand.
But I like it a heck of a lot better than 38.
Oh, you got it. You got it.
What that did is allow us to roll the red carpet out to people in our community that don't have insurance, because now we had something to offer them.
It's funny that, you guys started it then. I did kind of a modified membership plan, but I didn't charge. I wasn't charging. They would come in 20%. I think we charged maybe $100 or $150, and it got 20% off, and it got their cleanings for free. This was in 1985.
Wow.
I had a nuclear power plant here, and I thought, how am I going to get all these nuclear power plant employees? And so I went out there and talked to their HR, and I used it for about 4 years, and then it kind of faded away. But today, you were doing it during that recession time, right after that. And then now it's kind of the hottest thing in dentistry is doing these membership plans. At least I see it, with guys from Bone Cloud to Clear to, all these softwares. So I'm, and I have no issue with it. When I'm talking to my docs, I hate to discount my fees. And I know that you've used compassionate finance, for a long time. And
well, that was my next point. My next point was we wanted to set up every payment option, available, so that if the patient said, I want to have this done, I just can't afford it, we'd have an answer for them.
You bet.
Now that was my tip number 4. So after the membership plan, number 4 is really set up every payment option. And I have to share with your viewers here on my wonderful compassionate finance story. So this was 2014, and Teresa and I, my wife and I, were having a couples weekend together in Santa Fe. And Paul, in May, Paul was in Orlando at the AACD meeting. And Paul and I, we're great friends in addition to being business partners. He always knows where I'm at. I always know where he is.
Yep.
And he knew I was having this couples weekend, but I get a call on my phone about 10 in the morning from Paul. And he's in Orlando, and I pick it up, of course, because I see the caller ID, and he said, "Hey, Gary, I'm riding in the bus back to the hotel. I just attended this amazing course from Dr. Bruce Baird." And if you know Paul, Paul's got this wonderful, even temperament. Like, he doesn't get real excited and he doesn't get bummed out. He's calm, and even and very reassuring to patients, because he's that calm in a storm, right? But he goes, "Yeah, I got to tell you about this, Gary." And I go, I know. I've been wanting to get you and Tim to PDA, to take the PDA course. And he goes, no, not PDA, but we're going to get there. But no, it's compassionate finance. And anyway, he was just on cloud nine. And I said, well, let's get that. And that's when I first heard about it. I said, well, let's get that installed. And he was so excited about it. And compassionate finance is amazing. In fact, you taught me how to use it, because you can use it and you can use it.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting, you were really the first one, though, that you said, I'm just going to tell my team, I think it was 14,000 a month or whatever, do 14,000 and just do it, and then, I don't know if that's grown or gone, but if it was more than that, then come talk to us. But
that's what we said. We set a limit. We said, because, it does affect your cash flow. So I think we set it at 15. And it was arbitrary. It was like, okay, guys, you can approve yourself up to 15 grand, cumulatively for the month. There could be one case at 15 grand. It could be two at 7,500, heck, it could be 15 at a grand, you decide, and anything above that, then come to us, because we'd like to have a, say in it. And we've approved up to 24 in a month. And our default rate in all the years of you using it, Bruce, through, again, your guidance and your team's guidance, has been a fraction of 1%.
Wow.
So my fear, remember, I was the guy that for years said, don't be the bank, don't be the bank, don't be the bank. And now, I look at this and essentially you're the bank, although it really is a much better system, because it's all automated.
Much better.
You do provide screening. So if something comes up really bad, you'll advise the office, this is one you might want to take a pass on.
That's right.
But basically,
the only time I tell them it's okay to do it, to override, would be like if you had 4 implants, it was going to be 8 grand, and the patient said, all I got's 5,000. I'm going, okay, we'll do it and we'll finance it. But that's the only time I really recommend overriding. Although some of them you might call, it may be a millennial who just doesn't have credit.
Well, where it came up for us, Bruce, and this will come back into play in post COVID-19. And as our friend Howard would say, so if it's BC, what is it? AC? After COVID.
Yes.
So AC. So here's what was happening to us in 2014. We'd have patients that we'd present, say, care credit, and in just true transparency, they would tell Carly, they'd say, Carly, we had a short sell on our house in the downturn in the economy. We walked away from a house and I've got dings on my credit. I won't get approved. But they're very transparent, and so we require a 20% down payment, with Compassion Finance, again, per your guidelines. And that takes all the risk off the table. Now, I know there's listeners that'll say, well, wait a minute, Gary, my overhead's a heck of a lot more than 20%. Not on your gross dollars, not on the growth. Your fixed expenses don't go up. Your overhead's 20%. It's lab and consumables and if you're using implants, hardware, that sort of thing, but it's 20%. Sure. And so we get a 20% down payment. We essentially take the risk off the table. And then we finance the rest, through Compassionate Finance. Yeah. But where you really taught me the difference was how to use it proactively to help patients. So this happens at least twice a week in our practice. We do oral conscious sedation.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of patients for our practice that, have decided to, exercise their courage and come in, but they haven't been to the dentist in 15, 20 years. And our average case size is around $5,000 for everyday general dentistry. It's around $5,000. Now watch how this works out. And by the way, that's not exotic dentistry at all. That's fillings, root canals, and a crown, crown or two. That's it.
Dentistry, yeah.
But that's what they need. It's essentially deferred maintenance that they didn't do in the 15 years they've been away from the dentist.
Love that term.
So now, here's George, hasn't been to the dentist in 15 years, but he's there and he's got insurance. And we say, George, we can do this a tooth a year for the next 5 years. And he's got no interest in that. He doesn't want to do that. He's there today. We said, or George, here's what we could do. We could use your insurance as a down payment. Even though we're out of network, we're friendly with insurance. We're happy to help people. So George, we can use your insurance. It won't cost you anything out of pocket. And we can spread the balance over 5 years. Your payment's going to be about $62 a month. And George says, heck, I spend more than that at Starbucks. Let's go. And now we are very productive. It ends up being a 1 or 2 appointment, a patient. It's super productive. And we gave the patient what they needed and they wanted. They're healthy. They become our biggest fans.
It's unbelievable what we've done recently. And we've really we're revamping. We've actually signed up more people for compassionate finance in the last 8 weeks than we did all of last year, because it's just the numbers. But with this, 90 out of 100 crowns are done one at a time, because a patient will always say, well, can I just do one? And you say, well, you could, but let's just use your insurance as a down payment. Let's get some payments. And so what we've done, and our new kind of way of talking to docs about this is, if a patient says that, can we just do one? That's the case you want to do. Go ahead. Now you're doing 5 crowns, or maybe it's a root canal, 2 onlays, and a quad scales, but it doesn't matter. And so for the docs right now, we've put a lot of data together, because now, when I first started it, when you and I first talked about it, we didn't have a lot of data, truthfully.
No.
I mean, no one was doing stuff for subprime patients. They were all working on the A's and B's, and they had no real options for the C's, Z's, and E's. And so what we have now is we have 10 years of data on subprime. We probably have more data on subprime than anybody in the country. And what we know to be true is even the E's, that they default at 17%, but the 83% are paying plus interest. And so you end up, even if there's a default, it's not a big deal, because you're ending up above your usual and customary fee. So we have docs now, we're telling them, looking at 25 grand a month. And if you're doing 100, by doing 25 of compassion, it really doesn't take away from the 100. It's just an add-on to what you're doing. And we're now recommending a separate bank account totally for your second business, which is your finance company. And what we're finding is, after 5 or 6 years, these docs that have done that, they're making as much in their finance company now as they are in their dental practice, which is just crazy to me.
So Bruce, let me share something with you that you'll be ecstatic about. So we are now a 2-doctor practice. Dr. Tim is the one that resubmitted you met Dr. Tim.
Oh yeah.
Tim became an associate in January of 13 in our practice. He became a partner by late 15. And the 3 of us, Paul and I diluted our 50% shares to a third. So we now each own a third of the practice. We recently had a partner meeting, and you're going to love this. One of our goals is to get to $1 million in comprehensive financing that we own. $1 million. Now we don't want to get there overnight.
Sure.
But over time, we want to get to $1 million. The average interest rate for us, because it varies, is around 9%. Okay. So think about that. The $1 million portfolio is going to return 90 grand a year in recurring revenue.
Oh yeah.
So our goal is actually to get to $1 million in outstanding financing with comprehensive finance. And that'll be a separate business.
Yep.
And all the while we'll be helping people. You know what was really interesting? When patients are very transparent, when they say, hey, Carly, it's not worth applying to Care Credit. I did a, short sell. I got a ding on my credit. It's just no good. and I want to share a phrase. I'm not a fan of scripting, Bruce, but this is a phrase that every one of our listeners might want to share with their financial coordinator. So Bruce, if you're the patient, Carly's going to say to you, you know what, Bruce, I totally understand. We're happy to be flexible with good people like you. Now, how do you feel emotionally when, by the way, her facial expressions, her nonverbal body language matches the words? How do you feel? Bruce, we understand. I'm a family person. I get it. Hey, we're happy to be flexible with good patients like you.
You bet. You bet. It's perfect. It's perfect.
They're the ones that, you know, they're so grateful. You know, they jump on Google and write you not just a 5-star review, but a 5-star love letter review. And then they tell all their friends about you. And next thing you know, this one act of kindness to help a patient, you know, turns into, you know, literally a freight train of new patients that came in because of the gratitude.
Absolutely. You know, you've always been, I mean, in my opinion, you know, knowing you over the years, you've always been a pioneer in making things acceptable, you know, for, you know, it makes sense, but dentists, you know, we're engineers and we have to check every box before we do things, but you have a way of making things acceptable. And that is one of the reasons I think you've been so successful. And plus just the way that we build relationships, it's you know, and it makes all the difference in the world. So
well, if I can come back to this COVID-19 thing, here's my thought. Imagine this, Bruce, fast forward to October. And meanwhile, you put a lot of things in place. You put compassionate finance in place. You put a membership plan in place. You've ramped your marketing up so that you've got new pay. Oh, and one more thing. You have trained your team on good verbal skills, on how to respond to the patient. Just a tip on that one. And if I can just take a sidebar for just a minute, I have to tell this story.
of course.
This is a client of mine. This happened pre-COVID, but he had started out with 12 plans, 12 PPO, and he's in a blue collar. He's in a town of about 70,000 people in Tennessee, a blue collar working class town. And meanwhile, PPO fees were eating him up. Really quality dentist, super skilled, places and restores implants, does cosmetic dentistry, can do full mouth reconstruction, just, you know, top notch. And meanwhile, he's getting eaten alive by PPO plans. He's got 12 plans. He said, Gary, I don't know that we can go completely fee for service, but I want to get down to 1 or 2. And so we've, in the course of the previous year, got down to 1 plan. Delta was the only one that was left. And anyway, he calls me on his way home one day, and he was on cloud nine. He said, Gary, I got to tell you what happened today. I got to tell you what happened. He goes, I was in the hallway, kind of behind the 12 o'clock wall. The patient couldn't see me, and the dental assistant couldn't see me. I was just waiting to figure out where to go next. And this patient in the room, she goes, every office has one, but she's just tough, man. She's just tough. She's blunt. She's, you know, she's just a tough one, man. She's from New York, and you know,
I was going to say that, but I'm glad I let you say that.
No offense to any New Yorkers,
Okay.
but she's blunt, she's direct, and she's not very sensitive. And he said, you know, frankly, she's kind of a pain in the neck. And she turns to, and before he did this, he said, Gary, you've been to my office, you've trained the team. Who on my team would you say would be the weakest communicator when it comes to talking about insurance with my patients? And without hesitation, I said, oh, that would be Brittany, one of the dental assistants. And I said, love Brittany, absolutely love, but that's not her world, right? Well, who's the dental assistant in that room? None other than Brittany. And the patient, this tough, surly patient, turns to her and said, hey, Brittany, how come you're not taking my insurance anymore? And my client said, I almost jumped in there to rescue her. Because he said, you know, I almost jumped in. It was my first reaction was to rescue her and bail her out. He said, you know what? I just decided to hang out and listen. And he said, frankly, he said, I was kind of like, if she falls flat on her face and does a belly flop, maybe the patient will leave, and that's fine. Because he said, and he said, secretly, I was kind of hoping she bombed and the patient would leave. And so he said, I just sat there, and she said, and I won't use a patient's name, but let's say it's Linda. She said, Linda, every patient is important to us. You are important to us as a patient. And we've determined that if we were to continue to stay in your network, we simply couldn't provide the quality of care that doctor insists on and all of us insist on. And you can count on us to never compromise your care. And the best way to follow up on that promise was for us to go out of network. Now, Linda, here's the good news. You can still use your insurance in our practice. We will still file your claims. And in fact, we'll fight for you. We'll still have an insurance coordinator. She'll do everything she can to help you with every benefit you have. And she stopped and the patient said, okay. And my client said, if my least effective communicator can have that level of communication with the patient, we're going out of network with Delta.
You darn right.
And I mean, he said, I was so, and I said, of course you did compliment her. He goes, oh my gosh. He said, not only did I lavish compliments on her, but he said, tonight my wife is going out and getting manicure, pedicure gift card for the local salon. And she's going to get a little gift tomorrow for just being so masterful. And what was really interesting, Bruce, is that when I did the training with the team, I said, I'm not a fan of scripting. I'd like you to make it your own, your own words, your own style, your own. But I said, for those of you that are more comfortable, here's the script. And I checked it afterwards. Word for word, it was the exact script. But not only was it the script, but hey, if you ever go to Broadway, I know, Bruce, you've spent time in New York. I've spent time in New York. We've spent time in London, in the theater district in London.
Love Never Dies. I saw it in London a few years ago. What amazing.
Now, isn't it true that all of the actors and actresses on stage are scripted?
Absolutely.
Well,
and we call it a one-act play. We call it a one-act play. It's just that's what we do. Yeah.
So fast forward to October. And Bruce, role play with me. I'm you, and you're the patient.
Okay.
And we've just been through, this crisis of COVID and ups and downs and all of this. And imagine I say something like this to you in October. Hey, Bruce, I want to share something. I want to share a decision that we made. Every patient is important to us in this practice. You are important to us. You are important to me. However, I've made a decision that as November 1st, we'll no longer be in network with Delta. Let me tell you why. As you know, our number one priority for you is your safety. And after this COVID-19, you see all the things we're doing. I mean, some days I feel like I'm in a biohazard suit. You've seen all this stuff, right? Well, it's funny, a little sidebar for a minute. My 7-year-old grandson knows what PPE is.
Yeah.
I mean, there were dentists that 2 months ago didn't know what PPE was, but my 7-year-old grandson knows the world knows what PPE is. So now come back to role play for a minute. You see all the stuff we're doing, Bruce, and you know what? Of course we're going to do that because your safety is my number one concern, my team's number one concern. We'll never compromise that in any way. And we've determined that if we were to stay in network with Delta, we couldn't do this stuff. And your safety is too important to me. So we made the difficult decision of going out of network. However, you can still use your benefits in our practice. We will still file your claims. And remember Meg up front? She will be your advocate to go fight for the insurance company to get you every nickel of benefit that you have. And Bruce, I hope, my fondest hope is that you appreciate the quality of care we provide, the priority of your safety in this practice, the way we spend individual attention with you, and the fact that we treat you like a loved one or a family member. And my fondest hope is you continue to come here for your care.
I wouldn't go anywhere else.
Bruce, I don't know that we've ever had a better situation and to use that patients understand. Now, Bruce, you and I have traveled in third world countries.
Yep.
And you know that in third world countries, dental care could be, especially when you get out in the villages, it could be an old man on the street corner with a pair of pliers. And to be fair, a pair of rusty pliers. And to be fair, that could also be a clinic that looks a lot like a practice anywhere in the U.S.
Sure.
But I'm convinced that whether it be in Granville, Granbury, Texas, or Phoenix, if an option for dental care was an old man on the street corner with a pair of rusty pliers, there would be people that go there.
Yep, there would be. No
They
doubt.
aren't your patients. They aren't my patients.
No doubt.
But I believe that this message, see, one thing that COVID-19 has done is it shined a light on our healthcare system. And frankly, it is not a favorable light. And no offense to our first line healthcare workers. That's not them. In fact, I truly believe that they deserve all the appreciation and recognition. Our nurses, our physicians, our hospital staff. First, my son-in-law, the father of our grandson Canaan, is a Phoenix firefighter. He's a paramedic in the Phoenix Fire Department, and those frontline providers are amazing. But how many times did we see early in this crisis in the media? Don't get me started on the media, but how many times did we see the image of that one hospital in the Bronx that literally patients wander around, look like zombie apocalypse? How many times did we see that? Of course, CNN used that on every single segment. And that hospital, it looked like a zombie apocalypse. And you're seeing, and then they showed, footage of, people in the hallways, laying on the floor waiting to get treatment, and so it shined a negative light on healthcare. And I believe that in the future now, more and more people are going to want to go to a dental office who they know, like, and trust. And they want to be taken care of by a dentist and team members who they know, like, and trust. And I don't think there's ever been a better opportunity to go out of network. And you have the wonderful imagery of PPE, and the fact, for a fact, Bruce, the executives at Delta are not having emergency Zoom meetings at night to figure out how to pay Dr. Bruce Baird more money.
That's right.
They aren't having those meetings. By the way, how do they feel about the shutdowns? How does Delta feel about it?
Well, they're still collecting premiums and not paying out any money.
They're stoked. They're absolutely stoked. They are collecting premiums, not paying claims. Frankly, they probably secretly hope the shutdowns last, because again, they're going to be better off. Their bottom line is going to be better off on this. But you can guarantee there are no executives at insurance companies thinking, you know what, dentists have to invest in a lot more PPE. We should raise their fees. They're going to go the other way, because companies are going to cry uncle and want lower premiums, and they're going to cut your fees even more. So there's never been a better. So, Bruce, I'll bet you had a grandmother like my grandmother. My grandmother, she's been gone for 38 years, but I think of her every day, and she's a lot wiser than I knew. I wish I would have known her wisdom back then. Truth. But my grandmother said to me, I think I was about 17, and she said, Gary, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And we've all been fooled by COVID-19 and by the PPO plans. But now you know better. So the next crisis, the one thing that I can guarantee, especially for our younger doctors that are on this webinar, this isn't the last crisis you're going to endure.
No, it's not. It's not.
Sadly.
We're going to do more of that.
I hope it's the last, a healthcare pandemic, I hope. But this isn't the last crisis. We've weathered.
I think we all are learning a lot right now, and maybe learning we were caught flat-footed. I mean, it was a deal. Let me go to Stephen and see if we have any questions, because we're about 45 minutes in. Let's just see.
Of course we have questions. I think we'll get even more rolling in as we start the conversation. Gary, I got to say that Disney World's going to have to secede the happiest place on earth to your practice. The way you talk about it, I mean, I might fly out there the next time I need something done. My goodness.
It's a happy place. I can tell you.
That's great stuff.
I was very happy too.
I know. It's like, wow, I just feel great listening to Gary talk about this.
Thanks, Stephen.
All right. So Dr. Greg Jennings here, he asks, what is a recommended membership plan that Gary or Bruce would recommend? Thank you.
Gary,
Bruce, do you want to take that one, or should I take it?
Go ahead. If you want to. I mean, I'll throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah. I would absolutely recommend that you have it done by a third party at this point. When we did ours, there weren't third parties. We had to kind of make it up and kind of go on the fly. But now there's some wonderful third parties out there. You named a couple of them. Boom Cloud. I have a lot of appreciation for Boom Cloud. Jordan Comstock is the founder. It's a small company in Utah. I've worked with them, referred many clients to them. They're a great resource. Everything can be customized. You know, that fee I recommended, that annual fee, we arbitrarily made that up. It represents a great value, you know, the $297. And Bruce, you've been to our practice, you know, we have all the technology. So it includes 2 hygiene visits, exams, and x-rays. And we'll take a CBCT.
Yep.
I mean,
it's
I
electronic.
mean, we'll take a $400 CBCT, you know, series if that's what Paul and Tim want, if that's what the information they need. Heck, we'll take bite wings, we'll take full mouth series, we'll take a digital pen, we'll take a CBCT, and we, you know, the exams, they're comprehensive exams. They cover the 2 hygiene visits, and then I love the 10%. So we started to think about this when we made it up. You know, Paul said, well, wait, we're doing implants. Now, implant hardware is kind of expensive. Should that be included? What about, you know, Invisalign? Should that be included? Well, Bruce, we try to run everything through a simple filter. And the filter is, how would it feel if I was a patient on the receiving end?
Absolutely.
And so I said, you know what, Paul? Let's make it simple for our team to explain. It's 10% on anything we do.
Yeah.
You know, so Bruce, can I put you on the spot for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. $40,000 restorative case. Does that count?
Sure.
What do they save?
$4,000.
$4,000. Ding, ding, ding. Oh, by the way, don't you love it? Oh, now I know this makes no sense clinically, what I'm about to explain. I understand that. Even though I'm not a clinician, I get it. If the patient comes in today and has a hygiene appointment and they want to come in tomorrow and have another hygiene appointment. Now, I know that doesn't make sense clinically. Guess what?
Sure, go ahead.
Be my guest. but more seriously, you know, what happens with Delta if the patient comes in today and then they come in 5 months and 29 days later for their second hygiene appointment, stamp denied, right?
Yeah.
So no games, no claims. Meg's not filing any claims on this, no annual award. It's like the best plan on the planet.
It is. Yeah, you know, one other company that we've worked with some too, along with Jordan and Boomcloud, is Clear.
Clear, yep, another good one.
Monahan, I like their formula, and so those are the 2 that I would.
Yeah, I would put those 2 as you know, Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods.
Yeah, I think so. Stephen, what else we got? Any other good ones?
Yeah, this is going to be a good one for you, Dr. Baird. Can we move existing AR to compassionate finance?
Actually, we have another product called Abella AR, which Abella is collecting 53% of over 90, which is unheard of. And so one, compassionate is something that we do before we do the work. So we set up financial arrangements for them. Abella does the work after the work's been done, and it gives them an option to be able to we picked up, Gary, I don't know if I told you this, but we picked up $70,000 in 28 days. That was stuff that literally we had written off in our mind, but we hadn't sent it to anybody. And we got to 77 grand. And I was like, where did this come from?
You know, Christmas time, right?
We had a patient, and I was talking to a buddy this morning on the phone from down in Waco. And you know, he said he has 200 and some odd thousand in AR. And I said, well, one cool thing, and he said most of it's over 90. I said, well, one cool thing is you're going to get a bunch of free money coming in. So that's what I would recommend. Abella does it after the fact. Patients can actually pick a payment option through the portal that allows them to pay at no interest. So it's no interest after the fact, it's interest before the fact. All I want to do is collect it after we've done it, and we're trying to get that money. So good.
It's literally like found money. It's like Christmas in August.
You know, we had what we've done, Gary, and I haven't talked to you about it, you know, because Abella is $299 a month, and that's all we charge. We're working with some big medical groups, and we're doing a 75-25 split. But with dentistry, I wanted it to be something simple. But the cool part is we waive the $299 and we waive the setup fee till July 1st, just for people that could use it and collect money. And so we've actually collected, for guys who are not paying a penny, over $1.5 million in the last 5 weeks. Wow. And so it's just something that I thought be good. There's no obligation. Come July 1st, they say, hey, I don't want to do it, but I'm not too worried about that because now they actually know the product. So
hey, what a great way at an individual practice level, what a great way to recover some lost cash flow that they affected during the shutdowns. I mean, it may not make up all of it, but it's gonna put something in the bank account.
Around money, it's kind of like compassionate. We've got docs that are bringing 40 grand a month in, you know, and we've gotten letters from them saying, man, I don't know what I would have done without this cash coming in on work that I did 3 years ago. So interesting.
How cool.
Stephen, what other questions we got?
Yeah, so if you would like some free money for free, go right over into the chat and click that offer link, and you can try both of the tools that Dr. Baird just talked about, Compassionate Finance and EDiL.
Awesome.
All right, let's see here. So any recommendation for a company to work with for fee analysis and PPO elimination? Thanks.
Gary?
You know, back in the day, negotiating with insurance companies on fees was an effective strategy because most dentists didn't know you could do it. Most offices didn't do it. And so when we started our journey with those 34 plans, we actually had some success negotiating with insurance companies. However, even with the negotiated fees, we still couldn't make them work. Now, what's happened, because more and more dentists know about it now, most insurance companies will not negotiate fees. So it's pretty much an exercise in futility. And I would,
this huge conglomerate that's trying to tell them we're leaving, but
yeah. Well, if you're a Heartland, if you're, you know, if you're a Heartland or you're a, you know, an Aspen Dental where there's, you know, 600 locations, then you've got some leverage. But if you're, you know, right, Dr. Paul and Dr. Tim over here in Phoenix in one location, no. So sadly, I would simply report, Stephen, that I've not seen success with those, and I've seen it more of an exercise in futility. And really, the insurance companies don't need you unless you're a massive DSO.
Yeah, no
but
doubt.
They really don't need you because they literally just say that, hey, doc, no offense, but we don't need you. We got so many in your area that we don't need another one. So I'm not seeing negotiation.
I saw one interesting deal maybe a couple months ago about that PPOs really aren't insurance companies. They just happen to have 1,500. They're really a marketing company that is selling something to employers, making a whole lot of money. And then their only goal is to resist paying out that 1,500 that they're paying.
Well, here's what I teach our clients. Like our discount rate was 38%. And we had a month early on, early in practice ownership, where we had $30,000 in insurance adjustments, $30,000, Bruce. So I told Paul, I said, Paul, if you annualize that, 30 times 12 would be $360,000. We're spending $360,000 a year on marketing. He said, no, Gary, we're spending a lot less than that. I said, no, we're spending, and I used air quotes.
Yep.
And he got it. And he goes, oh my God. I said, Paul, we could spend a fraction of that and get a much better result. So last year, Bruce, in 2019, our total marketing, and we generate about 80 new patients a month. That's a 2-doctor practice. I really don't want more than that. I mean, I'm not turning them down, but I don't want more than that because I'm not sure we could deliver a remarkable new patient experience with too many more than that. But I love that pace. I spent 1.8% on marketing. So Bruce, I put you on the spot. Can we put Stephen on the spot?
Sure.
I mean, absolutely. I will do my best.
Okay. You can call a friend. You got 2 right next to you here on the video. So Steve, I think you might get it, but we'll see. Stephen, you're a dentist now in this question. And which would you rather spend, 38% on marketing or 1.8%? Take as long as you like. Go ahead. Take as long as you like. Which would you rather spend? I'm
going to go with 1.8%.
Yes. I knew he'd get it. But really, I'd like you to think of that because you're paying, and the reason why is you're paying the insurance company to provide you patients.
That's right.
Now, we spent 1.8% and we get the added benefit of patients choosing us for reasons other than we're on their insurance.
Absolutely.
And,
Huge.
you know, and Bruce, one more topic that we can glance on, and that's that I believe that the future of successful practice is more comprehensive care, longer appointments, and I believe that plays right to patient interests as well. When, you know, if we can do something in one visit, one long afternoon, you've got one visit to the practice,
One
You
break,
know,
one sterilization.
I mean, it makes sense for everybody, but that doesn't fit the insurance model. You know, I'll share a little sidebar with you. This happened last summer, Bruce. I haven't shared this with you. A very good friend of my wife called me in a bit of a crisis. She said, "Oh, Gary, I'm sorry to bother you, but my 18-year-old son, just had a skateboard accident. The skateboard popped up, hit him in the mouth, and diagonally fractured one of his front teeth, and he's going to need an implant. Can you recommend an implant dentist? But it's got to be a dentist in our network." Now, Bruce, what I didn't tell you, and I will now tell you, this woman is insanely wealthy. Insanely wealthy. Her and her husband live in a 28,000 square foot house that I'm convinced there's rooms they haven't been in. But notice what she asked.
Yeah.
And so I paused and I said, let me ask you a question. But hey, good news. This can be fixed. Your son will be good as new. But let me ask you a question. What's more important, finding the best implant dentist or finding one in your network? And she says, well, of course, finding the best because it's in the front. So I share that story because without judgment, because Bruce, we've all been imprinted. I've been imprinted by my grandmother who grew up during the Depression, who taught me that, Gary, you have to eat everything on your plate, because there are people in the world that don't have food. You need to eat that. And that's an imprint, right? And Bruce, you may have noticed whenever we're together at meals that my plate's clean at the end of the meal.
Well, now, you can tell by looking at me, my plate's always clean. So, I mean, although I'm down 14 pounds during the COVID, I've been working out every day.
There you go.
I know
I got 8 miles in. I got 8 miles in today before our webinar, so I was pretty happy with that. But anyway, but this woman may have been imprinted by, if you have something, you should use it.
That's right.
So when you start to bring people that don't have insurance into your practice, there's 2 questions they'll never ask you. They'll never ask, are you in network? Because that's a silly question if you don't have insurance. And secondly, they'll not ask you when you present treatment, they'll not ask you if it's covered by insurance or not, because that's immaterial.
That's exactly.
So I love what you do with PDA in terms of helping doctors with comprehensive treatment planning, helping with all the elements, helping with the marketing to attract people like that. But I believe the future of a thriving practice will be more comprehensive care with your patients. That's good for everyone all the way around, including your bottom line.
You bet. You and I need to do a program just on that. I mean, it would be fun.
Yeah.
Any more questions, Stephen? I know we probably do.
Of course you do. Every time you guys have a back and forth, you generate about 2 or 3 more. So yeah, great stuff here. If all your patients are fee for service and they are paying your current fees, won't we be losing money if we sign those patients up to find out we have a plan that they are not included on?
Great question. And so part of the key to making a membership plan work is to bring in new patients from your community. You've got to market that to the community. And if I can share a tip with you on that, Facebook ads work great. So a Facebook ad, and by the way, you can geofence Facebook ads. So those ads can only go to, say, people, we're in suburbia. You've been to our practice, Bruce. So we might send that ad to people that live within 8 miles of our practice. Now, we also learned some demographics that you can use through Facebook. We like women because women are typically the decision makers of healthcare providers in the practice, right?
Yep.
And we found women aged 35 to 50 who shop at Whole Foods and who do yoga. Now, Bruce, I'll put you back on the spot. Right. What does the characteristics of shopping at Whole Foods and yoga add to this mix, add to this filter? Probably money, because in some communities they call Whole Foods whole paycheck because you can spend your whole paycheck there. But there's also an orientation towards health.
Towards health. That's exactly right. Yep.
In both cases. So now we send that ad. Women age 35 to 50 who shop at Whole Foods and do yoga, who live within 8 miles of Life Smiles. And the ad simply says, no dental insurance, no problem. Ask us about our TLC savings plan.
Perfect.
And now another good place for that ad is on LinkedIn. Now, who's on LinkedIn? LinkedIn are either owners of businesses or executives or executive level people looking for a job. And so we started experimenting with LinkedIn ads. And initially we thought these ads would attract those executives looking for a job, because if you don't have a job, guess what you don't have? Insurance.
Insurance, yeah.
So that's who I thought we were marketing to, until one day I get a private message through LinkedIn. And let me tell you, I've never shared this story with you, Bruce. So this gentleman, we end up scheduling a call, and he says, Gary, I went on your website and I discovered that your dental office is 2 miles from my business. I own a business. It's 2 miles away. And I love what he said next. He goes, it's just a small business. I only have 100 employees. Oh, only 100. He said, I only have 100. But he said, it's a very competitive business. And he said, I always try to attract and keep the best team. And I wanted to offer them dental benefits. I looked at Delta and I discovered it's a ridiculous deal. They wanted $700 per member per year per employee, and it's lousy benefits. It's horrible. And then I discovered your membership plan. I saw your ad on LinkedIn. He said, if I understand the way it works, it's $297 for the membership for the year. And then they get 10% off on any service, right? He goes, kind of the way I feel. I'll pay for their 2 hygiene appointments and exams and x-rays. I'll pay for that. And then if they need any treatment, then they get a 10% savings. Is that right? That's exactly how it works. And he says, can I sign up my 100 employees? And at this point, I kind of looked around. I was kind of thinking I was getting punked for a minute.
Yeah.
Where's Ashton Kutcher? Where's Ashton Kutcher? Is he going to come out? Is this a trick question? And then I just, well, that would be great, George. We'd love that. And he wires over $29,700 in the account. So here's the tip. And this is, I'm going to tie this, exactly, mic drop. This is where I'm going to tie this back in. Okay. Remember we talked about a relationship driven practice. Bruce, you and I have a saying that we've both used. We got it from somewhere else, and so they all got it from somewhere else, but data never lies.
Yep.
People do. And I don't mean that like in a bad way, yep. But data never lies. So remember we talked about relationship driven. So I want everybody on this webinar to do a homework assignment. I want you to grab out an old school piece of paper. Remember, this is analog, a piece of paper and a pen. Remember those, Bruce?
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. And I want you to write down the names of 20 people in your practice that own a small business without looking at your computer. And if you can't do that, you may not have the relationship driven practice that you think you have. And again, I don't mean that's not meant in a critical way. It's just meant as, it's like, Bruce, if I'm your physician and I say, I don't need to take your blood pressure. Bruce, you look fine. You've lost 14 pounds. You're going golfing. You're fine.
Yep.
Well, the cuff might tell me something else.
That's right. That's right.
So doctors, if you can't write down 20 names of people that own a small or mid-sized business that are patients in your practice, and I don't care what number, I said 20, it could be 12, 10, whatever, then you may not have the relationship side of the practice that you think you have.
One of the things that I do, Gary, is if I see productivity dropping, this is over 35 years, I don't go and start saying, come on, we got to get this. We got to start talking to them in hygiene and everything else. I go back and I ask myself a question. Do you remember the 6 new patients you saw this week? Do you remember their names? Do you remember who they are and what's about? And what I find is when things are successful, I tend to go through motions. When they're not successful, I was hard to work with. But once I realized it was me and I wasn't building the relationship, that made a huge, huge difference. So,
well, again, to tie this into reopening after COVID, Dr. Reed, Omer Reed, sadly we lost Omer, in November, or excuse me, in February. Omer was 87. And he was a mentor of mine that will be forever imprinted as a mentor in my life. I met him in 1980, and he had a Rolodex card file. This is old school, and some of our millennials might not know what that is. You can Google it and see. But he had a paper chart on all of his patients, but then he also had a Rolodex card file that had 5x7 cards alphabetized for every one of his patients. And in between visits, he would write down notes. So he'd write down spouses' names, kids' names, dogs' names, hobbies, interests, anything that related to the patient. And he invited the team, whenever they learned something, jump in and write a note. Now, Omer did something that really kind of was a power tip. He would come in a half hour before the morning huddle.
Yep.
And he would get a printed copy of the daily schedule, and then he would pull up every one of the index cards.
Yep.
And if it was me, when he came in to do hygiene, he'd walk in, Gary, it's so good to see you. How's Therese? And my goodness, I've seen your grandson. How's your grandson Kanan doing? And I mean, literally, Omer had 2 associates, 5 hygienists, big, busy practice. When you were in his chair, you felt like there was nobody else in the building.
You were the only guy
there. But this is the challenge that I would have for you, doctors, as you are opening back up. And for those of you that haven't opened back up, do your homework. Study on every patient in your schedule. Hopefully there's a place in your computer where you have those notes, spouses' names, kids' names. Like I might know, for example, I'm the doctor and Linda's the patient. And we know that Linda's taking care of an elderly mother at home. Those are the kind of things that would be in the note. Linda, I've really been thinking about you in the last few weeks with everything that's been going on. How's your mom doing? Or maybe we know that, George works, he's a waiter at a restaurant. We're going to talk to him. George, I imagine you've been impacted by this. How are you doing? Maybe we know that Bob owns a restaurant. Bob, how are you doing? Have you opened back up? What's the seating capacity now? Just talk to him about what's going on. That's what I meant at the beginning by saying it's more about relationship and connection than productivity.
100%. Those tips. I mean, Gary, we could sit here and talk all day long because I love you and I just love where you come from and where, it comes from the heart. And, I really appreciate you. Well, we'll try to answer some more questions later, maybe online or something, but I'll make sure that everybody gets this because Gary, I think you've done amazing work. You've got an amazing clientele of dentists around the country. I love the fact that you've got a plan and you've done it yourself, this PPO conversion to the fee-for-service practice, as well as this insurance. And there's nobody in the country that speaks at it better than you do. So thanks so much.
Well, if like in preparation for our webinar today, I'm going to share my favorite book.
What a book.
It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It was written by Viktor Frankl. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Viktor Frankl, if I may, I'll read from the back cover jacket. Between 1942 and 1945, psychiatrist Viktor Frankl labored in 4 different Nazi death camps, included the dreaded Auschwitz, while his parents, brother, and pregnant wife perished. Now, here's what I want to read. Frankl argues that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how to cope with it, find meaning in it, and move forward with renewed purpose. And I believe that quote really sets the tone for the future and for dentist's future. And pardon me, Bruce, you've heard me say that dentistry rocks.
Yep, I have.
And despite the COVID-19, kick in the teeth,
yes,
and all the related stuff that goes with it, my perspective hasn't changed. Dentistry continues to rock. I was really sad, and I won't name the group, but there was a big group on Facebook, a big, one of the larger Facebook dental groups. And the question was asked, given all this with COVID-19, would you advise your son or daughter to become a dentist?
Actually,
98% said no. And some of them was explicative no, and I won't use the explicative so we keep your webinar PG rated, but it was explicative no. Yeah. And I respect those feelings. I don't hold those feelings.
I don't either. I don't believe
dentistry rocks because we have the ability to change people's life. Bruce, if I asked you to name just some of the patients whose lives you've changed through the care you provided. We will never get you on the golf course today because you'll be here the rest of the day naming those patients' names.
I will.
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed about that.
It's a great time. It's a great time through struggle, and we'll make it. We're going to make it on the other side. And thanks so much for being on with us.
Bruce, my pleasure. Thanks a bunch. If anyone wants help in reducing insurance dependence, I do this. Would love to help you. Go to thrivingdentist.com. Would love to help you do that if that's of any interest to you.
Oh,
100%. I'll make sure your links are included. Is there any way you could hold up that book one more time? I got a few people in the chat.
Yes. This is
Amazon.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning.
Amazing.
And it's written by Viktor, V-I-K-T-O-R, Viktor Frankl, spelled F-R-A-N-K-L. And you can see that it's a short read. I discovered it in '84, and I've read it every year since, at least once. It wasn't written for COVID-19, but it's as if it was.
The perfect fit. All right, buddy. Thanks so
man.
much.
Thanks, you guys.
Steven. All right.
Take care, guys.
All good. All right.